All right, everyone. Welcome to the Strange, Dark, and Related podcast, episode number 4. I am your host, Elfie, and with me are the Relateds. We actually have a special guest today. Not all of the Relateds could make it, so we do have a special guest to help us out today. And we will start off with our usual question of the day. Okay, so question of the day. What smells better than it tastes? So I'll go first. My name's Elfie, and tea. Tea definitely smells way better than it tastes. I like tea. I think it's delicious. But it, like, when I smell it, it's just, and I taste it, it's not the same. It's just not the same. And I wish tea would taste as good as it smells.
Okay, I have 2. Number 1.
Wait, what's your name?
Oh, my name is Willow. Number 1. It is Cascade Lemon for the dishwashing soap.
And you've tasted it?
I've never tasted it. I've been told I'm not allowed to as a small child. So I've just like continued that through, my life. I'm assuming it probably won't taste as good as it smells.
I think it's a fair assumption.
Yeah. And then the second thing would be when you are freshly grinding coffee. There's this, like, it smells savory to me. Like, it makes, just thinking about it makes like my mouth water. But it never has that same like full bodied richness. It waters, it is watered down. So like it definitely like waters down that like smell. Yeah.
My name is Mills, or Milsimjunkie. I would say something along the same lines. I would say soap. So like, fresh scented soap definitely smells better than it tastes. And I know from experience, I was not told not to, so I did it. And so thus I know for a fact that soap smells better than it tastes.
All right. That's fair. Alrighty. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed that little tidbit of information. Mills, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Alrighty. So today's topic is one I think most people can relate with. First jobs. Or I guess just jobs in general before you started your career. Oh.
You disappeared.
I disappeared, guys. I'm invisible.
Move forward. There you go. You have the invisibility cloak.
I do. All right. Okay. So first job. So I guess like my very, very, very first job ever, I was voluntold for, and it was a babysitting, nannying job thing over like a summer. And it was this woman and her husband. The woman was the stepmother, and the kids one of the kids, the older daughter, didn't really like her. The older daughter was about like 8 years old. And then the younger daughter was like 5 or 6 years old. So younger. And it was my responsibility to take them to their swim lessons, take them back to the apartment, watch them, make sure they didn't set the house on fire. That was pretty much it. So I think I was like 14 at the time. And it was like really awkward because I didn't know what to do with these kids because they didn't really have toys. So they just sat and watched TV.
No toys. That's horrible.
Yeah, like they had books and they had television, and they could only watch like an hour of TV. And so it was like really difficult to keep these kids entertained. And then like the worst part of it was when one of the kids, after swim class, like we were walking back to the apartment, and the older girl, she decided she was going to run away. So she just bolted and left. And I was like, well, I'm not going to chase after you. Like we're walking back and I'm carrying all of this pool stuff, and I have your younger like sibling. Like if you get kidnapped, oh, well,
your fault.
Yeah. I was like, I'm 14. I am not equipped to deal with this. And so, eventually like we made it back to the apartment, and like the little girl showed up at the apartment eventually. But yeah, like I told her stepmom like what had happened, and then I got fired because I couldn't handle the kids. And I'm like, okay, well, your child's a terror, so that's. I'm 14. Like, if you need if your child needs special attention, you should not be hiring a 14-year-old kid to be watching your child.
Yeah.
And I was just like, thank God, like I don't have to do this job anymore. Yeah, because I did it as a favor to my mom. So that was horrible. Never wanted to do another babysitting job ever again.
I've never babysat. Go ahead, Willow. What were you saying?
I said I think that's fair. I also babysat. It wasn't my very first job. My very first job that I ever got paid for was doing voice work for a book. I was 10 years old and I got paid $10. So I thought that was cool. I was like, $10, I'm 10. Woo, $1 for each year.
That is a lot of penny candies you could buy.
I know, exactly. I was very excited. And, but my last babysitting job, I also got volunteered by my mother to babysit for her friends' kids. These kids were bilingual, so they spoke 2 languages, and they were 2 older kids and a baby, like a 3-month-old. And the older kids were probably about 8 to 10, around there, a boy and a girl. And I told my mom I didn't want to do it. I was probably 15 at the time, and I'd been babysitting since I was 9. I was like, I really don't need this money. I don't want to do this. But she said that she had made the commitment and I had to do it. So there I go to to babysit these hellions. And I get there. The mom, and also my mom wouldn't allow me to set a price for my babysitting. She said it was whatever the people wanted to pay me. So it was 3 kids, and one of them was not a newborn, but like a baby. And we played for a little bit, and the boy, they had a loft, and on the loft was like all their toys, and the boy would start like pelting us with toys from the loft, and then started chasing and then like screaming in the other language, so not English, so I couldn't understand what they were saying, and to like his sister. And then he came downstairs and was chasing her around, which is, I feel, normal kid behavior, is like chasing your sibling around. And then he grabbed a knife and started chasing her with a knife.
This escalated quickly.
Yeah, I know. That's what I thought too. And I was like, what did I get myself into? I knew I didn't want to do this. So I called my mom's friend, who did another friend, like a separate one. Actually, I called my mom first and I said, you need to help me. And she said, call my other friend who does speak the language. So her other friend came over and was like, you can't handle them. I was like, I don't know what they're saying, and they're chasing each other with knives. I feel like this is beyond what I can do. And so she scolded them in that other language, and then all of a sudden they were angels, and then they all wanted to sit in my lap as we read books, which is interesting to have an 8, 10, and a 3-month-old in a very thin, small 15, 16-year-old lap. And yeah. And then when the mom got home, because she went out for a couple hours to do some like aerobics class or gym class or something like that. And when she came back, I explained what had happened. And the kid got yelled at. So I was like, oh, so this is why you like scream. And like, it was very aggressive. And then she paid me $3 per hour.
Not bad.
So it was $1 per child. And normally when like
that's
I
horrible.
would have to deal with hellions, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry that my children were horrible. Here's more money. So it was for 4 hours. So I got paid $12 for that. And that was definitely not the going rate at the time. That was significantly under. So after that, I told my mom that I'm never babysitting children again. And next time she can babysit them if she makes that commitment.
That's fair. Yeah, that sounds pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Mills, what was your first job? Did you ever have to babysit children?
No, I have never had to babysit children. I don't know. I don't think, at least during that time, I didn't have a lot of friends that I knew were babysat. So it was one of those things where we kind of, at a certain age, at least in my neighborhood, we all kind of took care of ourselves. At least the boys did, right? I didn't know if any of the girls or any of like the bigger families did. I told Elfie one time that I had a childhood friend who was like Mormon, and they had a lot of siblings. So they had a lot of older siblings. So the older siblings kind of babysat them, right? So the younger siblings obviously were in my age group, but yeah, I never really heard of a friend that, well, you know what? We always had like grandparents or a relative like babysit other friends and stuff like that. Who'd be like, oh yeah, that's what's his name's, uncle or whatever. We're just hanging out at his house kind of thing. My first job, I guess I should say, was not, were we talking about like we have to pay taxes kind of job?
No, it could be anything. I didn't pay taxes on that.
I definitely did not pay taxes on my $10.
You're like, no. My first job was probably working under the table for my mom's tax guy, of all people, right? So he had a side business where him and his wife and a small crew of people, that included me, Little Mills, would go clean office buildings after hours. So we had like a hair salon, which was haunted, which we had a couple office buildings in the downtown area of Stockton, California, which is not exactly the most nicest neighborhoods, but office nonetheless. And we just go in after they were closed, like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. I would either vacuum, mop, squeegee, like this hair salon, for example. I would squeegee the what do you call it? The mirrors and stuff like that. And yeah, that was my first job. It was for not a long time. For some
How old were you?
15, 16.
Okay.
At the time. Oddly enough, their son, who was a little bit on he had it out for me because now I wasn't, he wasn't the cool young kid in the group of people that clean office buildings. And he would always complain about me. And then eventually the boss, my mom's tax guy, was like, hey, Arwen, it's not working out. I'm like, what? I show up. I literally go, I show up. It's like I'm not doing anything but like cleaning. And he had a problem with me just because, everybody was like, I was so not chatty, but I was cool with everybody. And then, I don't know. He can keep that job. But that was my first job. But yeah, I had some fun experiences. I learned a lot about Stockton, learned a lot about some of the buildings which are haunted. The hair salon was haunted.
What was your creepiest? Because I also worked in a haunted place.
One time, there was a hair salon on this place called, I forgot what the hair salon's name, but it's on Miracle Mile, which is, if you're from Stockton, you know what that is. It's kind of they try to regentrify it or whatever. They try to make it cool. But anyways, this hair salon been there for a long, long time, since 1950s. Anyways, it's one of those big hair salons with a big forum area with a bunch of hair salon bays, and then it had an upper area which had like massage rooms or something like that up there. Anyways,
what kind of massage rooms?
Do not know, or something like that. I don't know. There was like some loft area, upstairs area with more rooms. So I don't know if there were more. I don't know what I seem to forget what they used to do up there, but I would be up there cleaning.
It was a spa.
Yeah, or something like that. It's spa, hair salon, or something. It was just very large, and so I was cleaning upstairs. This is one night, and I heard some stuff, and then I was like, hey, and then the owner's son or whatever was working with us. He was downstairs. I thought he was upstairs messing with me, like messing around with some stuff. And I stopped vacuuming. I was like, "Yo, dude, stop messing around with me." And then I turned around. I was like, nobody there. I was like, okay, kind of creepy. And then a few more times, some other stuff happened when I'd be cleaning other parts of that salon or spa or whatever. And then one time I remember it had two doors. So one on the Miracle Mile, that's the main entrance. And then you had the back door. And so you would have, the way that that building was kind of created, kind of old, you would always have to lock the back door, walk in the dark through to the front, and then that's where they would pick you up, because that's the way the locks work for that particular building. So they're like, "Arwen, go ahead and turn off all the lights, lock the back door, walk through the dark to the front." And I'm like, all right. And I'm like trying to act all brave, turn off all the lights upstairs. I'm by myself. And then I lock the back door. And then I just start running right through the whole spa. I'm like, no. And then, yeah. And then that was just kind of a creepy thing that used to happen. But that was my first job.
That's pretty creepy.
It is pretty creepy. I feel like often, like, just empty buildings are very creepy.
Yeah, it was fun.
I mean, it's a good, like, first job to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it teaches responsibility and,
Sure. Yeah.
that everyone that you work with is not going to be great, and sometimes they suck.
Yeah, it was a good experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, when we used to clean the office buildings, I used to keep the highlighters and all the stuff they would toss in the thing. I'm like, I need this for school. Bloop.
Hey, that's a good deal.
Yeah, it was in the trash array, so it's not like I was stealing off someone's desk. It was in the trash, and I was like, all right, take that. And then, like, they would waste so much, so I would take it.
Yeah, people waste a lot of things.
Yeah. I had a lot of highlighters in high school. Highlight everything.
It's been very colorful.
No, I used to work for a coffee company, and at the end of the night, like, we were supposed to either donate or throw away the pastries. So anything that had dairy, like the cheese danishes and that sort of thing, had to be thrown away, could not be donated, because people could get sick and they don't want to be held liable for that. So it's supposed to be tossed. But instead of throwing it in the trash, us employees would just take it home, because, hey, what's the difference, right? Yeah, I think that was like one of the best perks it was one of the best perks of working the night shift, because working at night was like, I never liked closing up shop. I don't know. That just wasn't, I enjoyed like the mornings where it was just super busy and like there was really no time to stand around. It's just like time flies by, you open up, you start like prepping everything, and then take your first break. The rush comes. You take your lunch after the rush, then you get back from your lunch, and now it's just kind of like clean up and kind of prep for the next shift, and then boom, like, you're done. But yeah, working at night was just really boring. I just never enjoyed a job where there wasn't much going on. I like busy times. I like busy jobs where like the time flies by. If I just have to sit there and do nothing, it's like the worst. What do you guys think?
I also worked for that same coffee shop, and I was a closer for many, many years. I enjoyed it, like closing, until I realized what the morning rush was. And when you get into that groove, like the flow, and you're just like, bam, bam, bam. There's something so satisfying about that flow, right? Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed the night. I think it also like helped feed me and a lot of my coworkers as very poor college students. It definitely gave us food to eat. Especially like one girl who was living on her own. She was 19, barely making ends meet, had to decide between food and shelter, and working there definitely put food on her table so at least she could eat. Yeah. So I think it was really good. It's a great like first job, good health benefits, all that stuff. But it also taught me about flow in that morning rush and how one thing can also throw off your flow. Like you're making hot drinks and that one person, it's 30 degrees outside and they want a frozen drink. And it just throws off everything. So it is also interesting how.
But don't you feel like that interruption in your flow, like you just eventually learn how to adapt and how to like figure it out? You're just like, okay. Like I remember like when I was making drinks, I'd be like, okay, I can do this one. This one needs a little bit more attention. Like it needs like 6 shots of espresso. It's going to take a while for those to pull. So I'll work on this cold one then. And then like, and yeah, just like planning and organizing your beverages.
Yeah, no, it really does. And it also is interesting. I think that you 100% learn that. And for me, I turned it into a game. Like, how can I be more efficient in what I'm doing and like move less to do more?
Oh, move less. Hello.
Yeah. So, and like keeping all of my pictures within a certain range of me. Yeah.
Find the highest level of efficiency.
Yeah, exactly. Just to be able to knock everything out. I think the worst thing was though, one time when instead of setting a blender full of an iced beverage and I put it on the ice machine, lid was out just a little bit. And I didn't put it on the counter. I put it on the lid of the ice machine and it flipped into the ice machine. That was a fun time. But I feel like also teaches you how to deal with adversity like that, right? Like,
yeah, because if it falls into the ice machine, now you have to take out all the ice, clean out the machine because of allergies. And
yeah. Well, and it gets gross and gunky in there too. Like you don't want to leave.
Out of curiosity for either of you, what's the most expensive order you've taken at or worked at either one of your coffee shops?
I don't remember the most expensive.
I would imagine like, those catering orders, right? But like, yeah, what is the most expensive you've heard or done?
So there was one where someone came in to purchase an espresso machine when they used to sell espresso machines.
Oh, what? For real?
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. And I think they stopped because of
people doing that.
Not because of this specific story, but because like this happened a lot. But these people came in and they were like, oh, we want to purchase this and we want to pay with a check. And I was like, ooh, sorry, you can't do that. Not without my manager's approval. Like this is a very high ticket item. And who knows if this check will clear. And so they're like, okay, call your manager. So my manager's like, okay, check their ID, make sure that the check is legit. And I was like, okay. I asked for their ID. And they're like, well, I don't have like a state ID, but I have like my passport from the country I'm a citizen of. And I'm like, cool, let me see that. I can like check your name there. That's fine. But it was in a different language. And yeah, the characters were not one I was familiar with. So I was like, okay, let me call my manager again. Let me see what he says. Call my manager. I'm like, hey, this is the situation. I can't verify that this is their check. I can't verify this is their name. I don't even know if this is a real passport. It looks like it, but I have no idea. Like, it's from a different country. I have no idea. And he was like, I don't know. That's so risky. He's like, you know what? Forget it. I want that sale. Just do it. I was like, okay. So I did the sale, and sure enough, the check ended up bouncing. It wasn't legit.
Well, how much was the order?
Like $500.
For the
something like
espresso
that.
machine?
It was a small one.
Oh,
It was
okay.
really small. Yeah.
Got it.
It's just a small. That store that I worked at was a pretty small store. We didn't have a lot of retail space, but there were other stores that carried much more expensive machines.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it was not unusual for people to just, for stuff to get stolen or for, like break-ins that happened, or for things like that where the check bounced and he stopped taking checks. But yeah, it's just, that's probably the most expensive.
Willow, how about you?
They used to do like Christmas sales and Black Friday sales. So during that time, like people would buy espresso machines and like tons of bags of coffee. And I don't remember the highest ticket, but there was one purchase where it was 2 espresso machines, a coffee maker, and 10 bags of coffee. So I don't know how much that came out to because it was all on sale too.
Sure.
But it was a lot of product that we moved during that time.
Yeah.
But we also we didn't sell a lot of machines and things like that, and they really wanted us to push it, which was kind of funny. And the response that everyone would always give is like, if I get my own espresso machine, then I won't come see you.
Yep. And I'm like, I know, but I still have to try to sell it to you.
I know. So like my tagline would be like, would you like any pastries, beans, or espresso machines? Like after they're like, I like a tall latte. And I was like, cool. Any pastries, beans, or espresso machines with that? And then they're like, espresso machines? And I was like, mm-hmm. I have to ask every customer if they want one.
Yep. Mills, you used to also work in retail, right?
Yeah, I have no shame in saying I used to work for the big blue box, Best Buy. It was fun. It was like for probably both of you, working in the retail space, college student, post-college, and then quickly learned that I should be using my degree somewhere. And so moved out of that, which I'm glad. I totally learned a lot about people, salesmanship. I fell in love with photography because I had to actually learn how to sell cameras at one point in time, in like 2006. And so through that, the training, selling, and talking about it day in, day out, now I'm kind of like well-versed in photography, I like to say, in a practical and application sense rather than selling. But yeah, I've formed a lot of relationships there, friendships, but I have had a lot of fun and horrible and interesting stories working because our Best Buy was attached to a mall. So when malls are a thing, because there still are, but when malls are really, really a thing in those, early 2000-ish, it's people, even in Stockton, went to the mall, and that was the hip thing to do because that's really the only thing you really could do in Stockton. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you saw a lot. We saw a lot of theft. We saw a lot of fights, a lot of interesting people come in through the store. I don't know which one I can tell. But I've had a lot of funny stories, and you find a lot of people. Do you guys find, actually, it's a good question for you guys. Do you find, now that you're not working in those coffee shops, do you find some of those friends are still within that retail space? Because I still have friends that still work at that same Best Buy, that same almost similar job. And I feel kind of not sorry for them. It's just like they got stuck in that trap where they bought into the whole retail system where it's like, oh, I can, salesperson, work my way up to supervisor to manager, and hopefully one day I can manage a store, and it's one of those things where, you kind of want to tell those friends there's better out there. Get out of retail.
You can do it.
You can do it. There's a life out of there. I don't know. Do you have friends still in that same space, coffee space? Just out of curiosity.
I do. And I think a big part of it, I actually had coffee, funny enough, not at that coffee shop, but at a different coffee shop, with someone who had left that coffee shop, and she was on so after so many years you could take a sabbatical. So she was on her sabbatical and she was trying to find a different job. And she said that in trying to find a different job, she realized that the way, I don't want to talk poorly about this company, but the way that the management there could definitely improve. I think that there's not enough support within that company in order, no one feels supported within the company. And if you have a manager that does support you, that's very rare. And you should stick with that manager as long as you're within that company, because it was difficult to find that. And she said that the way that she was treated, even though she got along great with her manager, but the way that she was treated really brought down her self-esteem. And the way that customers speak to people in retail, it really brings down your self-esteem, because they'll say things like, so when are you going to get a real job, right? And it's if you want this to be your quote unquote real job, right, if you want it to be your career, that's fine. Maybe that's someone's dream, they've always wanted to run whatever, maybe this is the best that they're, anyone in their family has ever done. Right. So just having people just say when are you going to get a real job? Or, people treating you like you're less than just because you're working retail. Some people are just so rude. Not everyone. There were a lot of really nice customers, but you would get some customers that would treat you like you're nothing. And yeah, it was just the attitude towards those employees. And I know even after I left, I said, oh, hey, now I'm working for this very well-known company. And one of the customers asked me, she's like, oh, but you're not really an employee, because, you used to work here. You're just a temp or something, right? And I was like, no, I'm a full-time employee there. They're like, how did you get in? And I'm just like, okay, that's incredibly rude. But that was the attitude that you would deal with some customers. And you hear that enough and your self-esteem goes down and you start believing all these things that people are saying to you. And when you go to an interview or you apply for a job and you have to say, this is why I'm amazing, it's really tough, because you're just I don't know why. I feel like I'm an imposter even trying to apply here. But so many, you learn so much in retail and you develop so many skills that are so transferable to other jobs, especially in the corporate world. It's really valuable experience. And I don't know why corporations don't look at retail workers more. I had a lot of when I was interviewing for jobs, a lot of corporations would say well, you've never had a real job. And I'm like, this is a real job. I want to see you be up at 4 a.m, setting everything up, then deal with angry customers and keep a smile on your face. It's not easy. Under
the excuse of, oh, I haven't had my coffee yet.
Yeah. And it's that's great. I haven't had my coffee yet either. And yet I'm being quite pleasant to you. So, yeah, once I was in the corporate world, that's been one thing. Every time leadership has asked me what's something that we can do better, and I say you need to look at retail workers more, because even though it doesn't look like their skills translate, it does, and I can tell you how, because now I see it, right? And so I think it's easy to get caught up in that retail world and not know how to get out. And feeling like no one will give you a chance. And I think that's why so many retail workers get stuck when they want to get out.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. It wasn't only until recently that I realized how much each of my jobs leading up to where I am now has lended to the skills that I've been able to develop. And it's just through talking to different people and them saying like, wow, you're really good at this. And then me thinking back, oh yeah, this is because I was able to deal with a rush out the door. One, I dropped a bucket, like a blender full of whatever, into the ice machine. Right? Like the stress that you feel in that situation is way more than any other stress I've felt in my current job. You know, and being able to deal with that is very valuable. Like if you find a good retail worker, I feel like 90% of jobs, well, maybe not 90% of jobs, but a lot of jobs, you can train people to do the job. Like it doesn't take a lot to do a lot of jobs. There are certain things that obviously need a lot of training, but I feel like if you have the mind for it, that there is a lot of different jobs that people can do and you're just not given the chance. Yeah. So, and I do know, I just looked it up right now, because I don't know many people that have stayed with that coffee shop. I do know one person. I just looked him up and he's still there. It looks like, according to his LinkedIn. And he's been there for 23 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. But I do know, like, I've known him. He was there for many years before I was there. And, well, actually not many years, maybe like a couple years before I was there. And I feel like he's always wanted to get out. And I know, Elfie, like, you spoke to him when you got out. And I do think that there might be a little bit of that. How are my skills transferable?
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and he's amazing. He is such a great worker. And also I think it's hard when you have certain things set up, because like I don't know how much money he makes now, but after being there for so long, with like stock options and a whole bunch of other stuff, like sometimes it's hard to leave that. And there is flexibility in the sense of you aren't working a 9 to 5. So if you need to be an opener and you need to be there at 4 a.m. and then you work 4 to like noon or 1 or whatever, right? Like that makes it a lot easier if you have kids. So that way you can be home for them in the evening. You know, and there's different things like that. But yeah, I think it is also difficult sometimes when you have that flexibility and you can do your job with your eyes closed and you're just really good at what you do because you've been doing it for 2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So question. So I found that, or I feel, you guys tell me if you feel the same way, but there's a certain camaraderie that you develop with like retail workers, especially if they've worked in the same retail space as you, right? Like you could have never worked together, but like, you know,
it's shared experience.
Yeah. So I used to work for Blockbuster, but it's like whenever someone finds out that I used to work for Blockbuster, they're like, oh my gosh, I used to work for Blockbuster too. And it's like this thing where it's like, now you're like instant best friends, even for like just that moment, because you're like, let's talk about what it was like, even though you both know, but it's just like,
you probably have the same similar stories, just in, you know, different contexts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Even the same crazy customers, I feel like. You're like, oh my God, did you blah, blah, blah?
Shared experiences. Well, Well, what's one crazy customer each of you can kind of relate to? Like, what's one crazy customer experience?
So I have one, which is kind of funny. So Elfie and I worked at the same company, but different stores.
Sure.
And I worked there for almost 7 years. And Elfie also worked there for many, many, many years. And so we knew a lot of people within that company.
Sure.
because it's all in the same area, like all the same city area, right? Like
Starbucks on every corner.
Yeah, exactly. That sort of thing, right? And it was interesting when you would talk about customers and you'd be like, oh, it like Susan is so crazy. She was back here. Like, this is her like 4th cup and she gets 4 shots every time. And then like, oh, and then like a Starbucks down the street would be like, oh, Susan, she's one of my regulars too. She also comes like 4 times. And then Elfie would be like, you know Susan? I also know Susan. She's also a regular at my store, and she also comes in 4 times a day to the store. And so I feel like there are customers
Susan gets around.
that just go from like coffee shop to coffee shop to coffee shop. And that must be their life, that they like finish their drink and they're like on to the next one. And they were just like known throughout the area, and they were regulars at all of these different coffee shops. Yeah.
Yep.
And there was like a few of them that were like that.
Yeah.
Where they are regulars at every store, and it's just kind of, and they're there every day. Kind of mind blowing.
As for crazy customers, I don't know.
Or
There were a
interesting.
lot.
Yeah, whatever.
I had this one customer. She was like one of my favorites. She was the best. She had some sort of disability. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but so she was like in her 40s, I believe, and her dad, who was in his like 60s or 70s, would drop her off, and he would give her like a note, like, give this to the barista. And so he would always tell us if she's allowed to have decaf or not. And then she would give us her Starbucks card, and her dad would always make sure it had money for her. And she would just like sit in the coffee shop, and like, she was so nice, and she would like talk to people. She loved talking to the baristas, and but she would always do this thing where she liked making cat noises. Like, she'd just be sitting there and she's like, meow, meow. And we'd get customers come up and be like, I think there's a cat in your store. And I'm like, nah, nope, it's just her. It's cool. She's a regular. There's no cat. They're like, no, like, I can hear a cat. I'm like, nope, trust me. It's one of our customers. Like, there's no cat in the store. She also liked making like boopy noises. So she'd be like, boop, 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 boop. And like, that's what she would do. She would just sit in the coffee shop and like make these noises like while she would be drinking her coffee. And then she'd finish her coffee and she'd call her dad, and he would come pick her up. And like, that was it. That was kind of like her me time. Or, if there was like other regulars, they knew her, so they would sit and chat with her, and she just had like the time of her life. So that was probably like one of my favorite customers. What about you, Mills? You must have good stories.
I have tons. We had regular customers, but working at an electronic retailer, and especially in a place like Stockton, you're going to find your people that are, nickel and dime. And then you also had those folks that lived in the richer neighborhoods of Stockton, and they could spend a lot more money, significantly more money. Right. And so those people the more affluent people would come in, and, probably every 6 months change out electronics. But then you had those same people, nickel and dime, like always trying to find a deal, would come in regularly trying to nickel and dime. So what's one that comes to mind? I'll probably save this for another day, but we had one time, Best Buy back then, they used to sell DVDs, and my particular store was very large. So most of the center of the Best Buy had like aisles and aisles of DVDs. I just remember, and CDs, by the way. And so I remember coming in just right at the beginning, and people were like, hey, don't go into DVDs, don't go to CDs. We're blocking it out with like caution tape. I'm like, what happened? Apparently, a customer and someone, I think there were special needs, had came in and defecated on their hand and decided to browse at everything in all the aisles. all those aisles. And I was like, I'm not cleaning that up. I'm not even clocked in yet. Yeah, so there was poop in all the aisles. So we had to get rid of all that product and clean it. Yeah, those are types of things that would happen. You were not expecting that, huh, Willow?
No.
Yeah, I was like, nope, I'm good.
Because so that reminds me of a story that I'm not going to share, but it did remind me of like good customers that
that didn't defecate on your store.
Ones that didn't defecate on the floor and bathrooms. But so I was in college during that. While I was working at the coffee shop, and it was actually very sweet because like that's one of the reasons I liked working at night is because it allowed me to be able to study while I worked. So I would keep my textbook underneath the bar, and because it was like pretty slow, like I could like clean and like read and like do drinks and like study all while, you know, doing what I needed to do. And we were supposed to talk to every customer, and then customers would see my textbook underneath the bar. And so they'd ask me about like what I was studying. And so I tell them, and my regulars would actually learn certain things about what I was studying because they'd ask me about it. And so then they would quiz me about it later, which was actually really nice. And so it allowed me to be able to like study in the store. And they were essentially my flashcards because they'd be like for if I was studying statistics, they'd ask me like the equation for something, or they would ask me, you know, like just little things that I would tell them about what I was doing. So definitely not poop on DVDs. But yeah, I think like, I don't know, I think there were some negatives, but I think there was also like a lot of good people that that like wanted you to succeed, right? Mm-hmm. And you, like, I worked there for so long that you see kids grow up, you see relationships like turn into marriages, like it was just kind of crazy, and you become a part of these people's lives, and they definitely become a part of your life too.
I think though you also see like the other side of that, right? Like you say, mm-hmm. like you see like, I mean, I can say that there were a few people that came in with their wives, and then they would also come in with their mistresses later on. And you're just like, oh, okay, cool. So this is a thing. and like, you don't say anything. You're just like, it is not my place to start this drama, but that's kind of risky to take your mistress to the same place you brought your wife this morning.
Yeah.
But I mean, a lot of like customers would come to us with you were their therapist, and they'd tell you like the craziest things. And I mean, I had people explaining like very like personal medical things that they were going through, and I'm just like, never wanted to know that much about you, but okay, like you have no one else to talk to, and so here we are.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's definitely a bar, right? It's just a different type of bar.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting take
bar,
on that.
Instead of just like an alcohol bar. And then and also sometimes you'd see your customers and you see them like very joyful every day. And then they come in and you're like, oh, what's wrong? And because they know you for so long, they do unload, and they're just like, my dog just died. And the other difficult part is sometimes you can't hear, because the bar is going and the blenders are going, and then there's like sneeze guards, and you just smile and nod. And then they're like, why do you look so happy? I just told you my dog died. And then you're like, oh crap. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't hear what you said.
But I think like that's where I learned how to read lips. So like now when I talk to people, I tend to look at their lips. I don't look at their eyes. And it's because like when I worked there, like you couldn't hear. And so you would kind of have to just like look at the person's lips to see, like try to figure out like what they're saying. And then like reading facial expressions and body language, because sometimes it was really hard to hear people. And so it's just a skill that you develop and you don't even realize you've developed it. And so like, sometimes I'll see people, I'm like, I don't know, this person seems off. And people are like, why? I'm like, I I don't know, like I can just tell, like there's just something off about this person, like, and I think it's just being able to read those cues.
I think it comes with a lot of things with working in retail space. It's like social interaction, right? Conversational skills, body language. You pick up on it. It's not like taught. At least it was never taught to me. You know, at Best Buy, it was like, well, basically day one, they're like, do these training modules, which is like all computer training, like, you know, the typical like HR thing that you got to like do. And then they put you onto the floor and you kind of just shadow and then you work through it. And then they ask more and more stuff from you. And, you know, maybe it's not technical learning, like, you know, I would imagine with a coffee shop where you have to memorize drinks and whatever, but you do have to memorize, like, not memorize, like get familiar with the product that you're selling, that you're supposed to be fluent. And I think that comes with time and more experience interacting with the public. You know, I think I learned a lot about my social skills working at Best Buy, and good and bad, right? You know, hey, I forgot his name. How do I get them to say their, you know, like, how do I remember their name? Like, oh yeah, what was your name again? Can you spell it out for me? And like, Bob. You're like, damn it.
It's like
B-O-B. I was like, oh, sorry, my bad. You know what I mean? And you learn those.
Just making sure it wasn't, you know, the different kind of spelling.
Right. But you learn those skills. Like I never learned that technically. I never learned that in business school. I never learned that in the stuff that I did. I learned that like learning it through retail. And I think like back to what you were both saying, like there's a lot of good that comes working in retail. And I feel like everyone should at least work retail. And that's why, you know, when I go out sometimes now, especially if I'm interacting with somebody that's supposed to be helping with, I'm more sympathetic to what they're trying to do. Even if sometimes they're just giving less than par service, it's like, okay, maybe there's some other external factors, or if they're just being flat out rude, then, you know, we'll address it that way. But like, I'm more sympathetic to sometimes what I like to do is go into Best Buy every once in a while and just see if these new kids are up to snuff and just like test them out. And it's like, all right, tell me about this camera. I'm like, you know, and oftentimes it's like, okay, this kid doesn't know what he's talking about, but he'll learn or he won't, you know, but you know, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like I learned so much working at Best Buy, working with the public. And like you guys were saying, it's just, it's a lot of transferable. And I think a lot of credit to you, Elfie, where it's like, you guys need to look for these corporate jobs, you need to look at retail because these kids or these people that are working these spaces are qualified. They just might not have the technical know-how, but you give them an opportunity, they'll work up to it, right? And so I think there's a lot to be said about that.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, I also agree with that.
So shout out to all of our retail workers out there. We appreciate you, especially during the holiday season. Geez, this is like the hardest time of the year.
I know how was Black Friday for working at a coffee shop? Because you guys seen videos of what it's like working in like a department store. It is exactly like, or at least it was like that, you know, with the people bum rushing the door for us. Like, how was it for you guys working in coffee?
So my store was a little bit different. It was a slower store. But our rush wouldn't come until after everyone was coming home after the shopping. So yeah. And we were right next to a church. So we would also get,
churchgoers.
Yeah. Yeah. So we would holidays would mess up your times.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Of when people would come in. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. That makes sense because people are up or out later.
Yeah.
For Black Friday, I worked at a bunch of different stores, but for the most part, the golden hour, I guess you could say, when you could expect people to come in was 10 o'clock because that's when people are crashing. Like they finally got into Best Buy or whatever store they've been sitting at, like waiting to get in. They got their stuff and they're like, I need coffee. And so like 10 o'clock would hit, like it would go from like completely dead. There's no one in the store. 10 o'clock hits and all of a sudden you got a line out the door. Ooh. And so it was, after working for so many years, like you kind of just know like what those hours are going to be like for the store. But yeah, I mean, it would change for some stores because some stores are smaller. Maybe it's more of like a residential store, whereas some are more in like higher shopping areas. And so, how many people you get is different. But
Sure.
yeah, 10 o'clock was kind of that golden hour where you just knew you were going to be busy.
Yeah.
And then you'd be slammed all day.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
As people like leave their shopping. I was also in an ethnic market, like plaza. So that would also, like, we also had to track the holidays for those different cultures as well, because those cultures would also impact our busyness.
Yeah, that's true. You also have to think about that, like what cultures, like what is your, like what's the demographic of your customer?
Yeah, because we did have a lot of, I worked in an Asian plaza, and so we tracked all of the Asian holidays to make sure that we were ready for when that would. And we'd also just talking to customers, like, what is the culture, like what is the traditions around it, what normally happens. And I think that, like, for me, it actually made me understand accents a lot better. And be able to have those conversations of like, tell me more about yourself. Tell me more about your culture. Tell me more about these things. I was very shy before working at the coffee shop. And after working at the coffee shop, I feel like it makes it a lot easier just to be able to strike up conversation with random people. So I guess on Levi's note, that would be my positive about retail, is like it helped me come out of my shell.
Nice. Yeah. What about you, Mills?
What was the prompt again? I feel like
what's a positive thing about
got it.
Retail?
I think just exactly that. I think transferable skills, learning how to deal with people, or just learning how to function talking with even if you're like an introvert, right? You get to learn how to socialize. But you also learn how to like read people, read body language, read attitudes, and try to create relationships, even if it's for you guys, right? You're at the counter and then they pick up their drink. That's a very short amount of time to build a relationship where, and I feel like in those interactions, you learn a lot how to transfer a lot of skills over to your personal life, right? I feel like without those skills that I learned, I feel like my personal life wouldn't be as where it is now, right? As sociable or as, just learning how to talk to people and learning how to remember people's names or remember something about them, so that way when next time you see them, you can kind of relate back to them, right? How's that TV doing? Or like, hey, how are the kids, or something like that, right? And I found some of those similar skills I transfer over into my personal life now too. So, that's a positive for me from personal development side. Agreed.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that like just the skills that you develop, it transfers not only to, your career, but also, your personal life. And it's not something that you can learn. It's a different experience. Mm-hmm. And I just think it's not an experience you can really get anywhere else. So
you definitely can't get it in school.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Definitely not.
And you're forced into situations that will make you uncomfortable, and you're forced to like figure it out, right? Like, I am really shy, but I'm supposed to talk to everyone. Mm-hmm. I need to figure that out, right? And so,
all right, guys, sorry about that interruption. Jumping back, skills definitely transferable. It's an experience you can't get anywhere else. I think that all kids at some point should work retail. It teaches you a lot of discipline. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Any final words?
Get a retail job. Find out for yourself.
I agree. And I think that retail is invaluable. Like now as an adult, Like those people that made me feel less than when I was working in retail. I don't view that. I don't view people that way. And because everyone is needed to make the world go round, I feel like the pandemic kind of showed us that everyone is needed. All jobs are needed to be able to make things happen. And there is nothing wrong with hustling and doing what you need to do to be able to put a roof over your head and put food on the table and do what you need to do. And maybe coffee is your passion, or maybe photography is your pet, like whatever it is that's your passion. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with staying in retail if that's what you want, or doing some of these other things that are not considered career jobs. Yeah, so that's kind of my thought is go for what you love and do what you need to do to make your life better.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on episode 4 of the Strange, Dark, and Related podcast. If you do work in retail, let us know where you work. We'd love to hear any stories that you have, because I'm sure you have plenty. And yeah, thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.